Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and it's time for some good old-fashioned sharing of how I'm feeling. Because if you've been listening the past few weeks, you know my wife has stage 3 colon cancer, and that news fucking rocked our world. We found out our diagnosis on October 19th, and when I say we, it's my wife who has the real battle, but I plan on being there every single step of the way. So we had a choice after getting our diagnosis. Go get the first cancer doctor we can see, or find out who's considered the best, and then go and lobby and try to get him to treat us. Lucky for us, Ange's best friend married a doctor who worked at Swedish for a long time. He knows all the oncologists, and when he heard the news of Ange's diagnosis, he wrote a friend of his, we'll call him Dr. Diamond, asking him to treat us. Dr. Diamond was on vacation, but he got back to our friend within an hour, and we now had our doctor. But since he was out on vacation when he accepted us as a patient, we had to go through his appointment system, and we found out that we would have to wait a week to see him before we could get in. That was so difficult because we sat at home, Ange was in agonizing pain, and we both were thinking the worst every day, and at night, we were ready to go back to the ER at a moment's notice because the pain was that bad. But the pain got better every morning, and we eventually saw our surgeon on a Wednesday. And he ordered a CAT scan for a Friday because Ange is having so much pain. And we actually had to lobby for that CAT scan, but we got it. And when we get in there, they find an abscess is causing the pain. But we had the CT scan done on a Friday, which means that she had to live with the pain throughout the weekend. So 2 more days she's going to have to live with this pain. And then we're thinking on Monday she's going to have a pump and drain installed in her that'll relieve the pressure and kill the abscess. But what's fucked up about this whole situation is every single doctor knows Ange is in a ton of pain. And they know that she can't start chemo until this abscess is taken care of. But they're all leaving her to suffer in pain until Thursday morning. So it's like we go in on a Wednesday and they tell us that she's not going to be able to have this thing drained and taken care of for a week and a day. So super upsetting, and she has to deal with this pain. And while I appreciate all of these doctors and all the hard work and all the knowledge and all the things they're going to do to save my wife, what really pisses me off about all of this stuff is that if this is one of their loved ones and they were in the kind of pain that Ange was in, it would be taken care of right away. But that's our shitty system. And it's so frustrating knowing that she would have been out of pain if they saw her earlier. But that's the whole story of this whole thing. Getting seen when you should be seen, regardless of age or whatever things are working against you. You need to be advocating for yourself to get shit done, or it's not going to happen. But back to the cancer part of the story. Monday is when everything changed for us. While Ange has this abscess inside her and she knows it's painful, it's Halloween Monday and we go to see Dr. Diamond for the first time. We're the youngest people in this cancer center by far. We're scared, but we're also excited because, well, this is when we're going to find out our fate or treatment plan or whatever Dr. Diamond has in mind for us. So we're waiting patiently for Dr. Diamond to come in, and he walks into the room and he commands it immediately. He literally looks at us and he's like, "I'm Diamond." And just the way he said it, it brought a new energy to our lives. He let us know what was going to happen. 6 months of chemo, some scans, and hopefully the cancer is going to be gone. And then Ange is one surgery away from being back to the woman she was before all of this, along with a few battle scars. So while the road sounds long and it's going to come with way too many appointments and pokes and tears and smiles and all the things, we finally have a goal, we finally have a plan, and that feels really good. And you know what else feels really good? All the support from all of you. I mean, so many people are asking how you can help. And it's more than just our friends and family, and we super appreciate all of our friends and family who've been cooking dinners for us and doing so much for us. We really, really appreciate all of you. And it's the strangers as well. I mean, for me, I'm not even the one sick, but other podcasters and industry folks are reaching out for me to do some editing for me or record for me, and strangers have offered to do research for me. And Luke McIntosh, I need to thank you very much for the help you gave me this week with the background you got on Connery Lundin. And for those of you who are listening right now, if you don't know the name Connery Lundin, it's because Connery, who's an insanely talented skier, well, his path to the pro game was a lot different compared to a lot of the people I have on the podcast. I mean, Connery was so over ski racing by the time he got to college that he decided he was never going to ski again. But that all changed. And these days, Connery has a slew of sponsors, he films every season, and he doesn't even seem close to being near the end of his pro ski career. But before we talk about all things Connery, I want to ask you to do a few things for me. The first one is tell your friends about the show. I'm guessing if you like listening to this podcast, your friends are going to like it too. And the second thing I want you to do is to share the podcast on your social media channels. That also helps things grow, and I guess it also tells a lot of your friends about the show. So it's kind of like if you share shit on social, you're killing two birds with one stone. You're telling your friends and you're sharing it on social, and it's going to make me really happy. And my wife will appreciate it too, and everybody should want to be nice to my wife and appreciate what will make her happy. And sharing the podcast will make her happy as well, and making sure Dr. Diamond is right on all his shit will make her happy as well too. Now I'm starting to ramble. I don't like rambling. So finally, I want to ask you to do the last and most important thing, and that's support my amazing sponsors, because I only work with the best brands. And those brands are Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Outdoor Research, Elon Skis, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk to Connery Lundin. So the word around everywhere I talk to is that you are a super nice person and that acts of random kindness are something that you're known for. And I hear your latest act of random kindness was to stoke a Palisades Tahoe family with 3 cords of wood. What's the backstory there?
Yes. Me and my friend Greg Brown stacked Sherry McConkey's wood. Must have been, how many cords did you just say? 3, 2.5. It was a lot of wood. The pile was deceiving, but it was my friend Greg's idea. We go to yoga together to Sherry's classes here in Palisades, Tahoe. And she had a big stack of wood and it was about to rain. And what better time to stack wood than right before a rainstorm? So Greg led the charge and I was happy to help. But, those things feel good to do. And it was fun.
Do you tell Sherry that you're doing it, or does she just come home and find it and try to figure out who the hell did that for her?
Well, our plan was to show up with her not at the house and have this enormous pile of wood beautifully stacked by the time she showed up. But she was walking out the door, so we kind of blew it there. But the job got done and she was really stoked and it was fun.
I would think that random acts of kindness and just being a good, nice person is something that's instilled in you by your parents. And are there certain kind of things that they did when you were growing up that rubbed off on you and kind of made you like the nice guy that you are? Because every single person I talked to was like, oh man, there's nobody nicer than Connery.
Wow. Well, that's really freaking awesome to hear. And I'll take that compliment. That's really nice. But, I think my parents always treated me with a lot of respect as a kid. They kind of treated me as an adult. I had a long leash as a kid. If I got in trouble and did something bad, I did something really bad because they had a lot of trust in me. So I think just it started from their parenting and having an older brother who kept me in check as well. He's 10 years older than me. His name's Cassidy. And otherwise, just, being nice and being around nice people is awesome. So trying to just keep that going.
So they're nice people. They've named your older brother Cassidy. They're from the Bay Area. Are they like old deadhead nice people?
My dad was definitely a hippie. He had long hair. He was an inner city Chicago kid. He started his high school ski team and skied Wilmont. My mom, she was an army brat. She lived in Hawaii and Italy. She's Italian. So I've got this interesting mix of parents, but my whole family's name starts with C's. Got Carol's my mom, Craig's my dad, Cassidy is my brother, my name's Connery, and then it goes on from there, from my aunt Cherie to Katerina to Shailene. I mean, it sounds a little crazy, but it's for fun.
It's kind of what you guys do?
Yeah.
And you're born and raised in the Bay Area, it sounds like. So it's not like you grew up in the mountain town. I think Oakland was home for you. And while I'm sure Oakland's changed over time, was it a rough place to grow up?
I grew up in a little bubble inside Oakland called Piedmont. So it wasn't rough in Piedmont, but I lived across the street from Oakland. I was quite literally on the border. So it wasn't a rough place to grow up in Piedmont, but definitely exposed to a lot of things like what it's like to be in a city and poor and just different cultures and, races and all of that. It was something that I thought was normal as a kid. And really grateful for that because coming up to Tahoe and, mountain towns in general can be very,
Snow White?
Yeah, Snow White, I guess you could say. So just cool to have that experience and appreciation and just understanding. My dad actually put me on a baseball team when I was 12 years old. I was on the Oakland Babe Ruth baseball team in East Oakland. I was the only white kid on my team. My mom would drive me pretty much into the hood. And I'll never forget that. The kids all treated me with respect and I was an outsider and Our coach was this 300-pound black dude, and it was a fun time.
And going on in that scene or in that city, maybe not in Piedmont, but right across the street, the whole hyphy movement and Mac Dre was going on. Were you involved in all that as well?
I listened to the music. I was not involved.
Okay. Fair enough. Another thing going on there that can kind of be sketchy. Actually, I've been to one of these games. I've been to an Oakland Raider game once. And while I was in that stadium, I actually kind of almost felt scared for my life. And I'm almost ashamed to admit that me and the guy I was at this game with, we left in the fourth quarter because I really thought I was going to get my ass kicked for watching a football game. But were you a Raiders fan? Did you go experience what Raiders games were like?
Yeah, I am a Raiders fan. I'm an Oakland A's fan, Oakland sports fan. It's hard being an Oakland sports fan because, we don't win very much. But no, I think you're justified in leaving that game early. Those games can get pretty rowdy and those fans are crazy. But that's part of the Oakland spirit, part of it. It's a big city, so there's a lot of different things going on, but that's definitely part of it. And it was cool to be aware of that as a kid.
Another thing that you guys did when you were a kid, which isn't really a city thing, was you went skiing every weekend. And for you, it sounds like you were in the car 6 hours every weekend. And when I think about people doing that, I think it must have been miserable. But did those 2 days of skiing make up for the 6 hours of driving in your head?
Well, I was little, so I got in the car and just it seemed like we teleported from point A to point B.
Right.
But I give credit to my dad, who really spearheaded that and made that part of our family tradition. And we always rented a house in Tahoe. We actually rented a house next to Sherry and Shane McConkey for the first 14 years that we lived in Squaw, or rented in Squaw.
Did you ever go and meet Shane? I'm sure you saw him go in and out of his house. Were you guys friendly? And were you like the little kid bothering him back then?
Oh, dude, I was way too nervous to talk to Shane. He was like a god. Like, there's no way I had the balls then to say anything to Shane. I wish I had, but I did see him, and it was really cool having someone like that so close and tangible.
Another person that was so close and tangible to you was a dude that helped you with your schoolwork, because when you're younger, I heard algebra wasn't your best subject. And is it true that JT Holmes was your algebra tutor way before he was your mentor?
Yeah, that is true. JT was my math tutor. The first year I lived up here with my mom. My dad was still working in the Bay, and my mom moved up here with me, which was amazing of her. And she couldn't teach me math, and I couldn't teach me math. So luckily we had JT Holmes, professional skier. He was in his prime. I remember being at his house trying to do math, having him teach math, and also popping in VHS tapes from stuff they recorded from, their first sessions at Lover's Leap ski basing, and telling us these stories. It was kind of like being there for history, looking back.
So when you're getting tutored by JT and he's this pro skier dude and you get to hear the stories of his escapades, does that plant a seed in your head of what skiing could be for you?
It definitely planted a seed. I mean, it must have. At the time, I don't think it did, or I don't recall it doing so, but I remember he had like drawers full of goggles and like all this gear. And, when you're a little kid, there's nothing cooler than getting free gear. I mean, there's still nothing cooler than getting free gear. But as a little kid, we were goo goo gaga over JT Holmes and just his lifestyle and what he did. He was like the cool guy we looked up to. And he was also our tutor. So it was just cool to have someone like that as an example that was living their dream and also just a regular person too.
And even before you met JT, I mean, you're going up to be a weekend warrior up in Tahoe, and I'm sure it was Mighty Mites at one point, and then you get funneled into like a real race program. When does ski racing get serious for you? Is it like by the time you're in 5th, 6th grade, it becomes something that you're really serious about?
Yeah, 4th, 5th grade is where ski racing, back then it was a different format. I was a J5, and we had the championships at Mammoth. I remember being I was one of the fastest kids in our Western division, I guess. Far West, that's what it was called. And I remember we had a dual GS as the last race of the championships. And I took my shirt off and raced the GS in just a bib, smashing gates with my arms, getting all bruised and getting second place. It was my best result. So yeah, ski racing was a big part of my childhood. And that was kind of the start of me just really loving skiing and having it become like my own thing more than just parents pushing you into something.
When you take your shirt off and you're racing like that, I mean, do you have that kind of goofy personality your whole life? And do you see that through the skiers at Palisades? they kind of have a sense of humor to everything they're doing? And does that influence you to do the same?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think you're a product of your environment, and I certainly am a product of growing up as a skier in Olympic Valley, Palisades, Tahoe. Like having Shane and the Gaffney brothers, Scott and Rob, and Nar, the movie, just the whole antics of skiing being fun, but also a total joke. I've always played into that and liked that. And people like Cody Townsend have continued that, JT. Yeah. And I'm trying to.
Yeah. And when high school came around for you, you had mentioned that you convinced your mom to move to Palisades. And I'm guessing that you split up. Your dad stays in the Bay and he works and does weekends up with you guys. And then you guys get to live the ski life up in the Palisades. How do you actually convince them to do that? Are you like, hey, I really want to make it in the ski world, and if I'm going to do that, I need to move to the mountains and ski every day, and they buy into it?
It wasn't actually my own push. I still give credit to my dad and my mom there because I was talented in ski racing, but I really enjoyed the life of a middle schooler in Piedmont in Oakland. So my dad kind of gave me an ultimatum. He was like, you can either be a soccer player and live here, or we like move up to Tahoe and we commit to this skiing, but doing both is not going to work anymore. You know, everyone gets to that point where you kind of got to choose, sadly. And my choice was to ski. And my mom hates the snow. She hates driving in the snow. She likes being in cities like Rome. And she moved up there with me and drove me to Sugar Bowl Academy for 3 years in snowstorms, being the loving mom that she is, in a place without her friends. And it takes a family to make these dreams become a reality. And that was the case.
And to have like these two lives, because I mean, your dad's still back in Piedmont, your mom's up in Olympic Valley. So you've got one life in the mountains, one life in the city. And I'm sure both of those lives cost a decent amount of money. I believe your dad owns a landscaping business. Is it a giant landscaping business that does the whole Bay? Or is there old money in the family? Or is it paycheck to paycheck? How do they mortgage the future for you? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. My dad was a total hippie. He was an arborist. He had just started his own little tree business in Berkeley. And turns out hippies can also be businessmen. He grew this company from just him and a friend cutting trees to something like 100 employees now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he's got city contracts, and, you know, he's really good with people, and he's an honest guy, and things have just continued to be successful with the business called tree sculpture. It's amazing, and I'm super grateful, and I've worked there a ton my life. I never want to pick up a leaf off the ground again. But that's how that panned out. And yeah, I was lucky to have my dad able to support us like that. Skiing's not a cheap sport.
No, so he's just like a hippie dude who decides to start this business, and it becomes an empire and gets way bigger than anything he could ever have imagined.
Something like that. I think he has a better version of that story.
Fair enough. I'll put those words into his mouth because he's not on the podcast, but whatever. So you guys moved to the Tahoe area. You're Shane McConkey's neighbor. And I'm guessing if you're to pick the three most influential skiers of your life, Shane would be one of them. Who would the other two be?
I mean, my favorite skier of all time is C.R. Johnson.
Okay.
He was a little younger than Shane, so he was someone that I look up to, and he was doing the big mountain stuff, and he was also an amazing park skier. He really had all facets of skiing figured out way back then. I mean, if you watch his skiing today, it's still current. So yeah, Shane McConkey, C.R. Johnson, Ingrid Backstrom. I always loved watching her ski. She's super powerful. There's so many to count. Just from this valley, it's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But I also feel like if you're a great skier and you want to move to a mountain to become a better skier, they either move to Palisades or they move to Jackson Hole or some move to Whistler. But there's only a few places that people go for like really gnarly terrain. And where you live and grow up happens to be one of them. So you have the advantage of terrain on your side, but you end up going to Sugar Bowl Academy. Today, it's like an elite private school. I'd say it's the equivalent of like a Holderness or a Green Valley Mountain School on the East Coast. But was it like an elite academy when you went to school, or was it just like a place that kids wanted to go when they wanted a little more coaching for the racing?
The latter of what you just said. It was a shack on the summit of Donner Summit. We had this little building, and they were sort of figuring their stuff out, but it worked, and it was really good. And, you know, we had these small classes and learned how to write really well there. Thanks to my English teachers and my math teacher. It was a 4-person class, and you get this attention in school that you wouldn't in a public school. And you get to ski from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., before you go to school. So it's a winning situation, being able to go to a ski academy. Not everyone's able to afford it. I feel very grateful to have had that, because without that, there's no way I'd be where I am now.
And when you look at it, the crew that goes to that school, are you guys looked at as like the rich and privileged kids who are racing against all the other places in the Tahoe area?
I think it's changed over time. I think skiing used to be a more approachable, affordable sport for your middle income family, maybe. I could be wrong about that, but it just seemed like the families that my dad hung out with, his group of friends at races, they didn't come off as rich, upper class people. It was just a fun thing. People that enjoyed skiing and got their kids into this sport. And that gives you such a ridiculous foundation to be a skier for life.
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at all people with a ski racing foundation as better fundamental skiers than everybody else. Sure, there's guys that'll look like they may be a better skier, but if you break it down and look at it technically, all the ski racers are better skiers in the long run. And that's because of all the time that you're putting on the snow and all the time that you're focused on making the perfect turn, I would think, and you're being coached to do that. But ski racing is regimented, it's repetitive, and it's a full-on competition against somebody else. Like, you're trying to beat people. And you're a nice dude who seems kind of laid back. Are you driven by the competition? Like, do you have that put him in a body bag Johnny mentality?
Definitely. I'm super competitive. I think the nice guy is a real, what you described. I want to be that, but I'm also hyper competitive. I enjoy competition. Yeah, it's always been a huge driver, competing, whether it was ski racing, and then after big mountain competitions, I've always been very competitive, I would say.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start things off with Outdoor Research. I love this brand, and everyone knows that you won't get better designed and functional gear for all conditions. I mean, it's been designed and tested right here in the Pacific Northwest, and for over 40 years, OR is and has been known for making the best gear on the market. But the OR I'm working with today is so much different than the brand that sponsored the show 5 years ago. While they still have the best materials and the most talented designers, now the fits are totally different. I was able to get a sneak peek of what's coming out in the near future, and it's game-changing. OR now has something for everyone. The park kid, the resort skier, the backcountry rider, and the serious mountaineer. And I like the gear they have so much for off the hill that I can't wait to get my hands on it. I'm stoked to have OR back in the mix, and even more stoked on how the new product looks. It's a refreshing change that you're going to be able to see really soon when you head to an Outdoor Research dealer or head on over to their website, outdoorresearch.com. My next sponsor is Elan Skis, and I'm in love with my ripsticks. They are so fun and lively, all while remaining light and stable. And there's something different about skis designed in the Slovenian Alps by real skiers. And what's really amazing is that they built a solar power plant on top of their state-of-the-art factory. And Elan let me know that this independence from fossil fuels, along with the new solar plant, will provide a carbon sink as powerful as 15,000 trees on an annual basis. So not only will Elan skis make you a better skier, but they are putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to the planet. To find out more about all things Elan and what they're doing with their factory, head on over to elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is a place you can get your Elan skis. I'm talking about Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. And they have been the one-stop shop for all your needs for over 60 years. And these days, if you can't get to their store, well, you still have the same great experience online over at peterglenn.com. The site has all the brands, all the products, and they offer free shipping on orders of $49 or more, a no-hassle return policy, and they price match any reputable shop on the web. So please support the brand that supports me, and check out Peter Glenn before you buy somewhere else. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. When you were at Sugar Bowl, it sounds like that you would also skip out on some of the ski race stuff and end up with the free ride team and be skiing with those dudes. I mean, did you show up to school with a pair of twin tips and a pair of race skis and then your regular clothes and then your race spandex and switch them out and kind of go ditch the race team and ski with the free ride guys and get away with it because you were so nice?
I don't think it was because I was so nice. I don't know that I was that nice back then.
Okay.
Little high school punk. But yeah, it got to a point where we were going to all these cool places like Montana and Utah. And I would always try and bring my twin tips. I had these Rossignol scratches. I skied for Rossignol back then, ski on Blizzard now. But I was on Rossi as a racer and I'd bring my scratches. And at one point the coaches would dig through our bags. And if we had twin tips, they would throw them off the top of the van. You can't bring those to the race. And that was kind of the turning point in my interest from ski racing to big mountain skiing. I think a lot of ski racers that have become big mountain skiers have a similar story there.
I mean, there's something to try to tell a teenager that they can't do something that they want to do, and that really pisses them off and turns them off to whatever you do want them to do, I feel like.
Totally. And I've always just loved every part of skiing, whether it's park skiing or big mountain skiing. I still love racing. I love watching mogul skiing. I think it's all really cool, and that's what's kept it fun for so long. So yeah, when ski racing sort of shut the door on all other aspects besides gates, I was kind of scratching my head like, I'm not here for this.
When I looked at all the results, because I like to look at results, and it happens with every single person I talk to, unless you're like Darren Ralphs, but most people who ski race aren't the best, and that's just how it is, because there's only one of the best, it seems like, every year, or a couple dudes who are in that top 3 position. And while you cracked the top 10 a couple times, there wasn't that much consistency with your race results. Were you ever able to put a finger on why that was, or is it just, it is what it is?
Yeah, no, I think I learned a lot from ski racing moving into big mountain, and part of the reason I had so many DNFs and didn't have the results I wanted is because I had a pretty immature attitude or game approach for ski racing. I was always trying to go as fast as possible out the gate. It was never like finish a race or two and build some confidence and then, build from there. It was a really short game that I was playing, trying to be the fastest. And you'd have these runs of glory and then you'd blow out in the second run. And it's just not a smart way to approach anything, especially ski racing. And so I definitely learned from that moving into big mountain free skiing to not be this hot-headed, let's go huge right now all the time thing.
I mean, it worked for Ricky Bobby.
Yeah, it did. He's a special case.
Yeah. When do things get to a point where you realize that like ski racing isn't going to take you to the U.S. ski team?
I think it was my last year of high school at the championships in Mammoth. I had the best race of my life, and I still didn't beat the fastest kids for my age in the country. 3 of them made the U.S. ski team. I was the 4th in that race. And at that point, I realized that to do this would take a lot of work, and it wasn't as fun anymore. The juice was not worth the squeeze at that point.
Did you have to deal with a ton of frustration at that point? Like you go all in on something when you're a sophomore in high school, and to not be fast enough, it's got to be frustrating, right? Like you put all your time into it and then it's time to move on. Do you just burn out on skiing at that point?
Totally. I did burn out on skiing completely. I fully quit. My plan was to go to UC Santa Barbara and never ski again, actually. It was a sad time. My dad didn't want to believe that I was done ski racing, and so there was a little bit of conflict there. And long story short, I'd gotten into Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder, and a week before classes started there, I dropped out of all my classes at Santa Barbara. I was going to go to school there. I actually had a house lined up and everything. And my dad and I went out to Boulder, and the next week I was going to school at Boulder, and skiing was back in the picture.
But your skiing, I would think, changes at that point. I'm like, you're free to go ski on twin tips or do whatever the hell you want on skis at that point. Racing is the last thing you're ever going to think about. Did it just purely become fun at that point?
It was purely for fun. I didn't know how to have fun skiing just for fun, just to go out there and free ski. I'd never done it in my entire life. So yeah, my first year, freshman year, I must have probably only skied 10 times going up to Keystone. And I always loved sliding rails and bopping around in the park and skiing powder. But it wasn't until my sophomore year at college that I lived with Tony Siebert. He was an amazing skier. And Keaton Brown, they were doing the FWT comps. And we all signed up and went to Telluride. And I was lucky to get 3rd place in the first comp ever.
Before we even talk about going to Telluride in that contest, we should talk about Tony for a minute, because we lost Tony in an avalanche in like 2014. And he was the grandson of the dude who founded Vail. He seemed like he had like a magnetic, amazing personality and was an incredible skier as well. But you were really good friends with him. You live with the dude. Describe who he was, because he's not going to come up in that many podcasts because he's not with us anymore, but he does deserve a nod.
No, I love Tony, and thank you. I mean, yeah, Tony was just like an amazing skier, but he had like one of those crazy, awesome smiles that was super contagious. And he was an amazing skier. He grew up in Vail. He was a half-pipe skier, but he loved skiing powder and park. And just the way he talked about skiing in the fall before that year He literally made me fall in love with skiing again. I was kind of, in a weird place with my relationship with skiing until meeting Tony and Teton. And yeah, he just lived it and loved it and made me want to do it again. And I'm so grateful for him, just for the energy that he had. And it was really cool living with him and skiing with him. And it's a really sad thing that he passed away in East Vale in an avalanche. And yeah, I miss him to death. We all do.
When he's around and you guys are living together, and I would think, it's like the time of your lives, you're in college, and he comes from like a family of ski royalty, I'll call it, because what his family's done in skiing is really amazing. And are there crazy perks that fall to the roommates as well as Tony? Like, are you guys getting early ups at Vail and free tickets and all that shit because of him?
No, not at all. He was a total scrub too. He was like one of us at the time. I think he lost that privilege a long time before we'd met him. That's what was so cool about Tony, is he was not in it for the glory, and he was totally against sponsorships. I remember he came to SIA once, and I had printed out this resume, and I was like as professional as I could make it, and I'm handing it to sponsors, and Tony would be like, "Oh, you brought your knee pads today, huh, Connery?" He would totally like clown on us for any sort of sponsorship and that stuff. He was a true soul skier, and I love that and respected that about him.
Well, I would say it's easier to be a true soul skier when your family founds Vail. It's a sad thing that he's gone, but he gets you into competitions. The first one that you do, you said, is in Telluride. You love competition, but you haven't been in competition in like a couple years. So I'm sure you start getting really fired up. And who's at this contest with you? Is it like the Johnny Collinson era of these contests? Or who were the heavy hitters back then?
Totally. Johnny, I think that was Angel's first comp, I believe. It might have been Tatum and Nude's first comp as well. There was a lot of us that were just kind of hitting the scene. It was a really cool time to be competing on the Free Skiing World Tour. And it was led by Jim Jack, who was the main judge. And he just cultivated this culture of big mountain competition skiing that was the opposite of ski racing. It was like camaraderie and fun and serious enough, but there was a party element. And that came from Shane too. Shane started the IFSA competition circuit, as you know. So yeah, it was just this community and this feel that was really cool. And right when we showed up, I was like, damn, I want to be a part of this. And yeah, never left.
So yeah, you get third under that. I'm sure it lights a fire under you to compete at some more. Are you like full on, like, I'm going to go to the next event wherever it is? Or is it like, oh, that was fun, I'm going to hit one of those again next year?
That's kind of how it was. Yeah. The second of what you said, I didn't really know anything about the people competing or the culture or where the stops were. I was totally just like, this is fun, this is cool. But it took me a couple of years before I was like really, really into it. It was kind of this thing that showed up and had some success, but didn't really take it super duper seriously until a few years later.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like 2011, you do well in two different contests. I think the one at Revy, you end up fourth. And that's a big deal because it's like both freeride tours are together. It's like the US guys and the European guys. And you're taking fourth in that one, which is a big deal because it's all the top dudes who are skiing in that arena. I mean, did it feel like a huge deal to you?
That did feel like a big deal. That was a really cool event, competing with all of the European guys, like you said, back when there were 2 world tours, which was a funky time in skiing. And then, yeah, the finals day on the Mackenzie face and backcountry of Revelstoke, we took the heli to the top. It was visual inspection, first time ever doing that. And I actually won that day. I won the finals day. I didn't win the whole competition,
Sure.
But that was one of the first moments of like, whoa, like these are like big dogs and you're kind of in here. You could do this. It was confidence and it was inspiring, and that was a highlight for sure.
I mean, it's a total statement, and it's like, hey, you've arrived. But with these freeride contests, especially at that point in time, it wasn't like a huge deal given to all the competitors it was. But it seemed like every year the dudes who are winning those freeride contests, not all of them are transitioning over to the film world or transitioning into getting big sponsorships. It just kind of seems like they still exist in that freeride world. And does the industry start noticing who you are at that point? Or are you still just swimming with that same pool of fish that are on the Freeride World Tour?
Yeah, I think I was still swimming with that pool of fish, like you said. Yeah, we were competing with, it was Johnny Collinson and Griffin Post and, like I said, Angel and Tatum. And God, there's going to be so many names I forget right now. But the names on the start list, when I look back, it was like, what a time of people and fun. And yeah, it was one thing I continued to notice was as the years went on, as there were people that competed and had success and then continued to compete. And that always seemed like sort of a dead end to me, staying in competition forever. And so at a certain point, we're all looking to progress and change. And what was once fun and interesting is no more. And I definitely saw myself moving on from competition at some point. I just didn't know when that point would be.
Gotcha. So you come into college bummed on skiing after your race experience. Then you totally fall back in love with it. You're shredding with your buddies. You're going to a comp here and there. Do you have a moment your senior year where you're like, fuck it, you know what? I'm going to go all in on this pro skier thing and put a plan in just to see if I can do it. Does that come into your head? And is that how you kind of go to Jackson?
Exactly what you just said. I don't need to say anymore. That was it. All in.
Okay. When you tell your parents that, they've been super supportive your whole life. They've kind of changed their whole lives to live around you and do what you want to do. I'm guessing they're cool with your decision. Did they fine, we spent all this money on Boulder, but fuck it. Let's go see if you can be a pro skier.
They totally supported it. I think that was a huge thing that allowed it all to happen, is having supportive parents. I'm super fortunate for that because, if they'd instilled any doubt, I think I would have been easily swayed in the opposite direction.
What is the actual plan? Is it all right, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to move to Jackson, that's going to be my home base, and I'm going to ski a shitload there, meet a ton of people there, and ski all of the events I possibly can?
Totally. That was the plan. After graduating from Boulder, I remember it was summer in Boulder. I still had some classes to finish up that summer in Boulder, and then I would still have the following fall to do 3 online courses. But that summer in Boulder, move out date is June 1st for housing. And so me and a friend had the hilarious idea to walk around the hill on Boulder and just chat with kids that were moving out of their houses and buy TVs and microwaves and mini fridges and anything that they were kind of just getting rid of for super cheap. And then we would flip it that same day for 4 times as much.
Huh.
I was able to do that for so long that I bought a plane ticket to New Zealand and could spend a whole month down there doing all the competitions in New Zealand. And that was when I started to really take it seriously. I wanted to get all the points in New Zealand starting in the summer and then move into winter and hopefully have a successful season and make the Freeride World Tour.
So it's 2013. And one thing I didn't really talk to you about your time in Palisades, and I'm going to talk to you about it compared to your time in Jackson, is when you think about Palisades, it is where the best of the best are going to ski. I think I talked about that before. You can go on the KT lift line on a powder day and look up and people are going to be pointing out lines and talking about all the shit that they're doing. And maybe it's toxic masculinity combined with a humorous side of bravado or something like that happens in Tahoe. But what's the scene like on a powder day in Tahoe when you're looking up, waiting for the lifts to start spinning? What's that vibe like? And even afterwards, when you go to the chamois, what's the vibe like?
Yeah, the vibe is high intensity. I think everyone is intense and there's a buzz in the air and people are quiet in lift line or they're yelling at each other. I mean, it's been blown out of proportion, the bro bra lift line stuff that goes on at Palisades Tahoe, but there's some truth to that. And everyone's nervous. Everyone's got their lines picked out. You've thought about what you're going to do the day before. Yeah, it's stressful.
So that's one aspect of Tahoe life. But then think about when you go to Jackson, you get a big powder day there. Is it a different vibe there with just different athletes and a different mentality, or is it the same thing, just different mountain?
Palisades Tahoe and Jackson are elite mountains, but they're both different in a specific way that every awesome cliff and feature happens to be directly underneath the chairlift at Palisades Tahoe.
Right.
So it's like you're filming or you're in a competition. So there's even added pressure and you want to be the cool guy or girl sending it. And it's just a scene where Jackson is a very spread out mountain and you kind of traverse, left or right from the tram and you're kind of out there by yourself. It's almost like you're in the backcountry. So the vibe between the two places is totally different. That being said, when you're on the tram in Jackson, there's the same vibe that there is in the lift line at KT22.
Okay. And you said that you're kind of on display for everybody to see. They've got that Hollywood aspect at Palisades. Have you had that one moment where you're lined up, everybody's watching, and you just totally blow it, and you have to hear about it at the bar later on?
Totally. Yeah, a couple times. There's this one hit on the Palisades, the ring finger, and it's an easy line to ski into because it's this diving board feature that kind of just directs you into it from the top. It's almost got arrows pointing off of it.
Right.
But the landing is super duper flat. And I fell for that one of my first time skiing the fingers and totally splatted and got buried and lost a ski. And yeah, it was a mess. That bomb hole stayed there for a while.
And then another thing that I would think you do, but I'm not really sure, is you move to Jackson. That's where TGR is located. Do you try to make contact with the dudes in TGR to try to get your foot in the door with them? Or do you do that with Gaffney when you're at Palisades? Do they know that you exist and are you trying to get your foot in the door?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess moving after competing for a long time and moving to Jackson, I just wanted to ski a new mountain, and everything in Jackson was so fresh. I had a great group of friends out there, lived at this awesome place called the HQ. And I did want to get on the radar of TGR, but I've never been very good at asking for things, and I've never really been one to push for things when it didn't feel natural, at least for me. And I just didn't feel like I was there yet when I was living in Jackson. And whether or not that was true, who knows, but kind of like for things to happen organically, maybe to a fault. So I never really did like reach out to TGR, but I would send them videos and stuff like during the early days of Instagram and try and be in touch. But yeah, I kind of felt like I was the outside guy.
Now it's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start out with Stanley. And you know them as the brand that invented the category of keeping your drinks hot or cold. You know, Stanley's the brand with that iconic green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot all day long. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle along with so many other products. Think food storage, coolers and jugs, camp cookware. They have something for everyone's adventure, and it's not overpriced like the competition. Stanley takes pride in delivering what it always has, the best in quality at a fair price. And anyone who's used the product will tell you, nothing comes close to a Stanley. And for listening to this podcast, Stanley's going to give you the best discount you'll find anywhere. All you need to do is head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and when you check out, enter the code DRINKFAST, that's all one word, all lowercase, at checkout, and you will get 30% off your entire order. If you spend over $75, I'll throw in a limited edition Powell Movement beanie. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. Since 2006, 10 Barrel has been brewing the country's best beers, and they don't stop with just beer. Between their cocktails in a can that feature real hard A and they pack a punch, their clean line seltzers, which I've been drinking a ton lately, and their Profuse Juice IPA and Pilsner, which are my go-tos when it comes to their beers, I can't get enough 10 Barrel. And I know they have some flavors that you're going to love as well. You just need to try one. So next time you're at the store, please pick up a 6-pack of 10 Barrel and support the beer that supports more in ski, snowboard, and bike than anyone else out there. To find out more about the beer, the athletes, the events, and all things 10 Barrel, head on over to 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. The 2015 season for you, it's like you're on fire. I don't think you win every contest, but you're the overall tour champion on the Freeride World Tour, but it's not the Freeride World Tour. It's like the Free Skiing World Tour that you're the overall champion of. When that happens, I would hope that it propels you into the spotlight a little bit more, that you get all sorts of sponsorships and movie opportunities. But those tours didn't seem to make people that famous. Were you able to line up anything after that, or was it all you being a guy that doesn't like to ask for things, having to ask for things?
Yeah, well, that was a great turning point, winning that 2015 tour. And it really came down to get it while it's hot. And I remember actually calling JT, who's been a mentor of mine, not just a tutor, but a mentor.
He's your 0% agent, I heard. Any deal that you have, he's going to put together the work or tell you what to say or help you as much as he can. But he wants nothing but for Connery to get paid.
You bet. Exactly 0%. Yeah, he's strict on that. And that's what he did. He helped me navigate the transition from getting flow and free gear to trying to work fewer days in the restaurant, which I was doing, and being able to ski a little more and finding more opportunities. And he really instilled the confidence and gave me a structure. You know, there's no guidebook to becoming a professional skier even today. I think it's a confusing landscape for those that are, you know, entering it.
Sure.
And I was really grateful to have JT to help with, you know, those awkward, weird conversations. And they worked. And my sponsors are amazing. I've actually been with Blizzard Technica for, I think, 12 years now. They brought me on in 2011.
While you were in college?
Yep. Along with Swanee and I've been with POC for a long time. And now I'm with Spider for 7 years. So I've been really grateful to have these sponsors that have allowed that transition from competition to the unknown filming world.
And it seems like, you have to have good sponsors to be part of productions, especially like your Matchstick or your TGR. But the first film that you seem to do that's like a big movie is with Powder Magazine, and it's the monumental production that they put together. And I think they go to all these national parks. And to me, it's an interesting one because I would think that anybody who gets their first opportunity to be in a movie is thinking about helicopters and sleds and just like the crazy shit that they grew up watching. But this is all human powered in 2016 when everything wasn't all human powered. Was that just a shit ton of work for you?
Dude, I literally never gone touring before we went to Yellowstone to winter camp for a week. I was totally a yes man and in the dark, and it was the coolest experience of my life. And that was a time where, yeah, the goal was to transition from competing to filming. And this opportunity with Powder Magazine and KGB Productions came up to film Monumental, which is, I still think, is the coolest movie I've ever been a part of, filming in all these different national parks. But it was definitely a situation of fake it till you make it. And that's what that was.
During this year, do you also film with MSP? Are you doing double duty that season?
Yeah, and that spring, after we had wrapped up the whole Monumental Powder Magazine movie, I got a call from Scott Gaffney while in Jackson, and he was like, hey, your name's come up. Tahoe's getting a storm. You want to film, I think it was like in 3 days or something. And obviously I was like, hell yeah, I want to film in 3 days. I'll be out there. And my lease was ending in Jackson at the time. I packed my car up with all my belongings that fit in my Subaru and drove out to California, and I haven't left since.
Well, it's nice how that all works out, because I would think the dream is, especially growing up and skiing at Palisades, is to be in those MSP movies because of Shane, because of JT, because of Gaffney. And is that like, holy shit, I'm doing this?
Totally. That was it. The dream had been made. You get a call from Scott Gaffney, that's a lifetime goal right there for a kid like me at the time. And I mean, it's a lifetime goal, period. And I took the opportunity in stride and moved out there. And I wanted to be as close to that scene as possible. That was home. And my 2 years, a year and a half living in Jackson was amazing. But there was some weird part of me that felt like I was cheating on Tahoe and Matchstick by being in Jackson and maybe committing to a TGR thing, or if that opportunity would ever come up. So, it's not a real conflict. I'm friends with the Jones and TGR guys, and they're all awesome, and I love their flicks, but I'm also happy the way it worked out.
Yeah. So in thinking of the whole space that you're in the ski world, you have made friends with the Powder crew through Powder Productions. And I would think that's a big thing because you develop relationships with the whole magazine staff because everybody's kind of, I would think, involved in just premieres, launches, and things to do with the movie. Does becoming friends with that whole Powder crew get you ancillary coverage that maybe you never could imagine? Like personal relationships actually help a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, I think just anything in this world is about connecting with people and in those relationships, and for them to be genuine too, not just forcing them and putting yourself in positions for, your own success. And that's what happened with Powder Magazine, that movie we did, Monumental. I got to stay with Johnny Stifter and his wife at their house in Spokane for a couple of the tour stops. And then I met the entire Powder crew, and it was my first movie premiere tour. And you're young, you have a lot of energy, and, I just loved it. And they really welcomed me in, and I'll never forget them for it.
And I would say for the next 3 or 4 years, it seems like things are really ramping up for you. Like tons of coverage in Powder. You're filming with MSP. You start to film with Warren Miller. I mean, could you feel all this momentum building?
Totally. Yeah, the dream is happening. You're going to the movies and you're filming, and the high fives and all the good things that I'd kind of dreamed of are happening. And it was an unreal time.
But then I look at your resume and you have a gap in your filming resume. And when that happens, I usually research the shit out of it. But my wife got cancer and I didn't really have time to research the shit out of that. So I'm going to assume that you had a big injury. What happened?
You're a smart man. Yeah. 2018, I was on a matchstick trip with Elise Sogstad. We were at Monashee Powder Cats, and it was low tide, and I was skiing down this nice lane of trees. I wasn't even jumping off anything, and I smashed into this huge tree stump and blew out my leg and my ankle. I broke it all.
Oh man.
In my ski boot. Yeah, that was my first real injury that sidelined me in 2018.
Did that take you out for like a year and a half?
That took me out for a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they had to cut your boot off, I'm guessing, or just it must have been like the worst pain ever getting that boot off?
Yeah, I was able to rip it off once I got to the lodge. We were out snowmobiling and I was able to sled myself back down on all the roads in the freezing cold. This is British Columbia. And I was able to take my boot off by myself. And yeah, it was painful, but not as painful as you would think breaking an ankle in a ski boot. I think the adrenaline was still pumping.
So does that injury kind of set you back a little bit? Because your career was like going so fast forward and it was like you were the biggest name in skiing for a few years, it seemed like. And then you have the injury that takes you out for a year. Does it set you back a bit?
That's a great question. Yeah, I remember we were filming for the Matchstick movie in Canada. The next week, I was supposed to go to Switzerland to film a segment with Warren Miller and Engelberg with Marcus Kasten and Blizzard Skis. And you get injured and everything falls apart. And I just remember having these terrible thoughts about what you just said, man, things are going so great. Oh no, what if I can never ski? And, all this doubt comes into mind. But at the end of the day, the only thing that was going to help was focusing on recovering.
You're able to get back to skiing at a super high level and you film again with MSP, you film again with Warren Miller. With Warren Miller, I think you started out, your first trip with them was to Silverton, and that's not one of those baller Warren Miller trips. It's a Silverton trip, which is amazing. But some of the people that I've sent on Warren Miller trips, it seems like they're having like caviar, champagne, and the best skiing experiences possible. Have you had a Warren Miller experience like that, or have you just gotten like the bro shoots?
Oh, dude, I've lucked out with the Warren Miller. 2 years ago, we went to Alaska and we did a boat trip, skiing off of a boat in the Prince William Sound for a week.
That's incredible.
That was a total dream trip, just beautiful out there, hiking for everything. And then this summer, I filmed a segment in Switzerland. It was a complete grass skiing segment. So 0 snow, all on grass skis, which I'd never heard about until this summer. And yeah, when you're staying at the base of the Eiger in the summer filming for Warren Miller, it was a special experience. And yeah, the food was good.
In skiing with Warren Miller, I mean, you can ski with Matchstick, but I would think the shelf life with Matchstick's a little bit shorter than Warren Miller because Matchstick's more gnarly, ski porn, or it should be every year. Warren Miller doesn't always have to be that because they're talking to the masses and it's a much bigger tour, I would think, in the grand scheme of things. But with you having a place in the world of Warren Miller, how long can you keep doing this? Can you ski into your 40s and 50s being a Warren Miller athlete?
I think it all depends on who you are and what you want out of it. And I think it is possible to keep doing it. But, we're always looking to evolve and grow. And so if there's a way to be in a Warren Miller movie in 10 years where, it's new and different, it's skiing, you can never finish skiing. So I think it's entirely possible. And, that's something I'm motivated toward is athletes and everyone we're seeing who are extending their careers, these longevity athletes like, Tom Brady and Federer and Nadal and Serena, Kelly Slater. There's so many. And I think it's a start of a new thing where athletes aren't phased out by the time they're 32 years old.
Yeah, it's amazing, the longevity, like you said. But when you do have to work, are you going to follow in the footsteps of your algebra tutor and go on to Hollywood? Or are you going to make a difference in your community? Or are you going to run a company? Do you have a plan? Or is it kind of like, oh, I'll figure it out when it comes?
I think the pandemic, we all got hit with a lot of free time and the wheel started spinning on, what is going to be the future after skiing. And there was a point I got so wrapped up in that headspace that I wasn't able to have fun skiing. I wasn't able to be productive in planning for my future because I was a wreck,
Yeah.
And so I think right now I'm in a place where I'm just trying to be as present and in the moment with where I'm at with skiing. And I definitely want to move into more of a role of like mentorship and helping young big mountain skiers, boys and girls, progress and be safe. I think safety is a huge thing that can be easily overlooked in our sport with the social media culture and promoting risk and how going big is cool and this and that. So I have a lot of things that I want to get my feet wet and dive into, but still being as present as I can with the skiing that I'm doing. And I'm not at a point where my skiing's becoming worse or I'm hurting. I feel stronger and smarter in the mountains and things are still on the up. So why dwell on the negative when it hasn't come yet, you know?
For sure. Well, I was just thinking that when that does come, just the fun things that JT seems to be doing are things that you could be doing as well. I'm talking about Hollywood and movie type stuff, and that would seem like dream gigs to me. So that's kind of what I was asking. But really, in speaking of your algebra tutor, JT Holmes, he's a badass in his own right. He's one of the best looking people in Palisades, Tahoe. He's like the Jimmy Garoppolo of skiing, I feel like. But now he's in Hollywood coordinating, rigging, doing stunts and all that shit. But I've also selected him to do your inappropriate questions.
Cool.
Yeah, if you don't know what inappropriate questions are, that's okay. It'll make sense when I play JT's first question, and pretty much what I do is I get JT to ask whatever he wants to you, and I can't even remember what he asked, but I'm going to play JT's first question for you right now.
Awesome.
Okay, Connery, I noticed, and I'm sure you guys probably talked about this in the podcast, but naked on the cover of Powder magazine, iconic, excellent shot. My hat's off to you. Your clothes are off entirely. Just how often are you skiing naked? Is this something you're doing all the time, or is this kind of a special thing between you and Guy Fatale, and you guys, do it annually? Are you doing this when you're coaching the Party Beach ski camps? How often are you skiing naked?
I think it's a very fair and very good question. We didn't talk about you having the second to last Powder magazine cover ever. Ode to Shane McConkey, skiing naked, big spread eagle, I believe it was. But it wasn't a one-time thing, right? Can you tell us how often you ski naked?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Squaw and skiing naked is part of the NAR culture in Squallywood, and it's just part of the culture here. And yeah, I remember my first time seeing a naked skier was Shane, was in Crested Butte flipping off some cliff naked, and I was like, dude, that was so cool. And I'd always had this dream to get a naked powder shot. I'd never seen one, and I understood why it never happened, because it's fucking cold.
Right.
But we were in Canada on a cat skiing trip, and the snow was not very good. We didn't have great light. Spirits were down, and I was like, well, screw it. Like, there's going to be a warm cat at the bottom. Let's do one run and see what happens. And we managed to, in one run, get a couple sweet shots. But I've done a lot of naked skiing before that and after that. Skiing naked is fun and funny.
Are there other people that you ski with that ski naked as well? Like, have you seen a lot of other naked skiers? I mean, really what I'm getting towards is, what naked skier has the biggest dick?
I would say none of them. Because if it's cold out, then you're not doing it for your ego. Let's just say that.
All right. Well, we will leave it at that. I'm going to go with JT's second inappropriate question.
Cool.
So I'm seeing a lot of questionable grooming choices lately in skiing and in snowboarding. I think that it'd be great if people started getting razor blade sponsorships, etc. I've seen Connery Lundin with a man bun. I don't approve of that. I think that his mustache has been rather tasteless. He's a very good looking boy. So the question is, Connery, I did notice you dyed your hair blonde recently. Did you sit in a chair at a hair salon with the tinfoil strips in your hair? Is that how that went down? How did that feel? And how much did that cost you?
Wow. He sounds angry about it. Justifiably so. I did bleach my hair. That was in 2020. And I think that hair is part of the reason Powder chose to use the naked cover, because I'm skiing butt naked through Powder with bleached hair and aviators on. So I do not regret the bleached hair decision, JT, and I paid $100 for it at the barber shop, and that was way more than I was hoping or willing to pay at the time, but I don't think I'll bleach my hair again.
Well, if it could get you another cover, I think it's worth it.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
All right. Final inappropriate question.
Okay, the girl, Kelsey. Connery, you're really out kicking your coverage here. How does it feel to have a partner that is better dressed, smarter, more highly educated, perhaps a better work ethic? Really seems to just kind of have her stuff together. What is it that you even bring to the table in this relationship?
Shh, JT, just shh. I'm trying to keep this going for as long as possible. I don't know, but I love her to death. Shout out, Kelsey. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. I think that should leave her with a smile on her face. JT will have a smile or a frown on his face, but it does not really matter. And Connery, that's Inappropriate Questions. That's the podcast. And when I think of your career, it's like you did it differently than so many different people. You quit ski racing because you were burnt out on skiing, and you were going to quit skiing completely and go to college and just be like a regular college kid. And you meet a couple buddies, they make you fall back in love with skiing, and then all of a sudden you take over, and you went to take skiing to a totally another level. And I don't know when you could say that you didn't have to work anymore and you just became a pro skier, but I believe that's where you are now, and that's the dream, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you can ski, pay your bills, and be able to travel the world and just do what you love to do. And you've managed to do that into your 30s, and it doesn't seem like it's slowing down at all. And that's something to really hang your hat on, because it's not like you had to ski race to do it. You only had to compete in Big Mountain, win a contest series in that, and then put that on the resume and then go film. And it's a beautiful way that your career has evolved. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mike. And yeah, really appreciate everything you said. And it's great chatting with you. I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you for bringing to light all of these different skiers' stories. It's fun to hear and learn from others, and keep doing it, man. That's sweet.
So that was time with Connery Lundin, and I haven't spent that much time with Connery at all in life. But I did get an hour with him last year at the Payne McShlonky. And I'm not sure if he competed or not, but we were sitting next to each other at the slot bar. And if you haven't been to the slot bar at Palisades, it is one of those places that every single skier should go. They should also stop by the chamois as well. But Connery and I sat down and we talked for like an hour at the slot bar. And when I walked away, I was pretty buzzed and about to get on a microphone, which is not the best conversation. But I was pretty buzzed thinking Connery is such an awesome dude, and we had made plans to do a podcast, and we were supposed to do it last spring. But it took a lot longer than I thought to get Connery in the mix, and usually that's all my fault because I make plans with a lot of people, and I don't follow through right away. I just put them on my list, and I should be in communication more and be like, hey, it's going to be a month out or 2 months out. But sometimes I'm bad at that. But once I get them on the list, I do get them on the podcast. And with Connery, we did finally get him on the podcast. And I love a good underdog story, and that's what Connery's is. While he's an incredible skier, it's not like he's doing everything he can to be a pro. He lets his skiing do the talking, and he's not a self-promoter, which means to get to where he is today, it's a lot harder for him compared to if he was one of those look-at-me guys. But the only time Connery is like that is when he's skiing under a chair at Palisades. And you know what else is great about Connery? Is that he's keeping the torch lit in terms of having a great sense of humor and not taking yourself too seriously. There's been a void since Shane McConkey left us, but knowing that there's dudes like Connery and Cody Townsend out there, it lets me know that the ski world will work itself out. That's the podcast for this week. I want to thank you for listening. I want to ask you to subscribe on whatever platform you do listen on, and I want to ask you to please, please, please support my incredible sponsors. They are Stanley, the 10 Barrel Brewery, Elon Skis, Outdoor Research, and Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Have a great week, everyone.